So lots of people actually think that survivors of human trafficking actually come from outside the country, and this is an issue that is related to smuggling and refugees and newcomers to Canada. But in fact, a significant portion of the human trafficking population is actually domestic survivors, and this is actually very well known. They're quite often vulnerable young people who are actually easy to prey upon. Sometimes they come from difficult home lives, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Not always the case though, and the reason for this is a very effective and common style of bringing somebody into the human trafficking world is actually called a Romeo grooming strategy, in which a predator or a trafficker, or in some cases a pimp, will actually target a vulnerable young person, particularly a female, and get her to fall in love with him. So it's quite similar to the grooming behavior that is used by child predators. So there's lots of warm behavior, there's lots of gift giving, there's lots of kindness, there's lots of declarations of love. And slowly but surely, the trafficker actually draws the victim into a web of deceit and control that it is very, very hard to leave. And then the next step in the grooming process is the trafficker will say to the victim, somebody's going to hurt me, we need some money, I need your help, all I need you to do is, do a date with a friend of mine, or take your clothes off, nobody's going to touch you, you just have to dance, it's no big deal, you'll make a lot of money, and nobody's going to hurt me. And quite often, because the victim is in love with her offender, she will actually comply and do this, and that is one of the easiest ways to draw somebody into the human trafficking world and have them never escape.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I've got, in fact, we're working on one case right now of a young lady who was brought from Ontario to BC, and what had happened with her is she was being prostituted, and she had actually called us twice. She had actually called into the crisis line twice, and they were telling her that, look, the police are looking for you. They're doing everything that they can, and can you please give us some help? And she was worried that because she had, taken part in some drug activity, that she would be charged. And the two volunteers that worked with her, they said, no, that's not going to happen. And but for some reason, she decided not to call us back. And I had gotten in touch with an agency in Vancouver called Deborah's Gate, and after I told them the scenario, they contacted the RCMP on Vancouver Island, and they were looking for her. And I got an email back saying that if this lady calls us back again, here are the questions to ask, because we're trying to find her. And so that thing is still, the situation is still pending. I mean, we've been, I think it was back in October, if I recall correctly, and we're still trying to find out what's happened. And I've called Deborah's Gate a number of times, the outreach workers there, and they haven't heard word one from this young lady.
And this is not uncommon, because if the grooming process is successful, even though the victim will in some moment have a bad situation, a bad event happen, decide she just needs to escape, she can't get away, typically what will happen is the trafficker will assume psychological control over the victim, reassure her that things are going to get better, it's not as bad as you imagine it will be, you can't escape me anyway. So there's a lot of dynamics that are actually very similar to an abusive spousal situation. And so quite often, even though help is available, the victim will not reach out for help.
Yeah.
So there are some people who say that human trafficking is something that occurs between the ears, not between the legs, right? So the control is a psychological control, not a physical one.